All right, so I thought I'd move over here so more of you get to play with the computer while we talk about the next two topics. What I want to do is talk about vectorization. We'll talk through an example where we do vectorization. This example straight out of the book. It's a financial calculation. And then we'll go back to section 2.3, I think it is, which has that gravity example. And I want to walk through kind of the philosophy that our author suggests for writing code and see how that works. And then show you what I'm proposing as assignments for the next week. Okay? So, vectorization. Vectorization is not common across all programming languages. It is something that is effectively built into MATLAB, and it's a super powerful feature of MATLAB. We're going to try to leverage it. But it's not something you're going to see in every programming language out there. You've already seen an example of vectorization, which is I can take a big matrix, it has all sorts of values in it, and basically, in one command, do a multiplication on this, right? And what I mean by that is, let's take this scenario. I've got 3, 4, 7, 9.9, 8, and 10. And maybe I want to do f equals ma on it, right? And what I want to do is say, well, these are all my different accelerations. And my mass is fixed as 10. Vectorization is this just intuitive thing that MATLAB does for you. Is you can specify m equals 10, a is this vector, you do f equals ma, and you will get how many values for force? You get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 values for force, right? And what it will have done is effectively calculated f equals ma for you that many times, however many times you have data. And it does it like this. Most other programming languages, you have to actually tell your program to loop through your data set. You have to basically say, hey, do f equals ma on this, then do f equals ma on this, then do f equals ma on this. And well, we will talk about looping constructs and for loops in MATLAB. But often, you don't need to do for loops. If you are really clever about it, vectorization can take you a very long way. And because MATLAB intuitively is very powerful and very fast with vector operations, it turns out if you do it this way, vectorized, it will run much faster than if you did it with a for loop. Right? So it's a cool, easy feature built into MATLAB. Let's just, so say acceleration equals 29, 87, 46, 49. So mass equals 10, and then I got force equals mass acceleration. That is a simple, super simple example of vectorization. A lot easier than writing a for loop, for those of you who are familiar with doing that, which we will talk about. Is everybody okay with this? Yeah? Okay, so let's try this calculation that's an example of a financial calculation and see what that looks like. So what we're saying here is we have a number of different investments. I don't know how many, a lot. I'm really rich. I'm Warren Buffett. I got lots of investments, okay? And my investments, I'm going to make them be the variable a. Since I have a lot of them, that's going to be my vector, right? Can't see that color, can you? Then I have, if I want to do savings or calculations around savings, I always have an interest rate. I'm going to represent that with R. And I have a period. So how long? How many periods of interest? And I'm going to represent that with N. Are we okay with that? And the example given in the book utilizes this equation, which is basically the value is going to equal A times 1 plus R to the nth power. Right? This is just the formula for calculating your growth of your growth of the value of money that you have. So this is my initial investment. Sometimes people call that principal, right? This is, the 1 is in there to retain the original value. This R adds on your interest. So in this case, I think in the book value, we're using 9% interest. So 9% is 0.09. And I think the book is giving a 10-year horizon. Yeah, you're using a 10-year horizon. Okay. And this caret is an exponent, right? So actually, let me write it not in MATLAB speak. This is not MATLAB speak, okay? And then I have to convert that into the MATLAB version. So let's try to do that up here. And what I want to do is introduce the notion of creating a script. MATLAB calls them scripts or M files both. The reason it's called an M file is because it ends with the .m extension. The script is a more universal term for this sort of thing. You might see the term script used in Python land, MATLAB land, and R land. So I'm going to try to do that up here on this really nice chair I've got here. Edit, make money. So this should work. I say edit make money.m, and it says, oh, file uses map. Oh, whoa. That's not where I wanted to make this file. Right? So remember we talked about paths and folders and directories? I don't want it to be there. I want it to be someplace nice, like my USB stick. Right? So if you bought your USB stick, now's a great time to bust it out. So I'm going to say, whoa, no. I'm going to do some PWD, remember print working directory. I'm going to put this in. I don't have my USB stick here, but I'm just going to go to C:, and I'm going to make a directory called E38. I'm going to go to E38 and make sure I'm there. It didn't let me do that. Why didn't it let me do that? There we go. So if you have a USB stick and you're trying to change CD into it, you're going to have to do the letter of the drive, colon, and the backslash, which I did right there in this line. That tells me to change directories to my USB stick. If you're using your own computer, you don't need to worry about that. Make sure your stuff is organized and structured, right? So I'm in C:, I'm going to go into E38. That's where I'm at. So this is where I'm going to do my work today. I'm going to delete this, right? So these are communal computers. If you're going to do your work on the computer that's here, my advice to you is delete it after you're done today, okay? Send it to yourself, use Google Drive, use your USB stick, whatever. Yep. If you don't have a USB stick today, bring it next time, okay? All right, so here we are. I'm in E38. I'm going to do my edit command again. And notice that I specify the name of the script here. My advice to you is never use spaces in the name of your script. No spaces, no special characters. While there are ways to make it work, you're just going to create a headache for yourself. No spaces, no special characters, and ends in .m. You'll just be happier if you follow this guy. Okay? So there you go. Edit make money.m, and now it says, do you want me to create it? Well, yeah, because what edit would do if the file exists is it would open it in MATLAB's editor. Since the file doesn't exist, it's asking me to create it. I say yes, sure, and voila, MATLAB's editor comes up. Now, those of you using Octave, I know when Octave edits a new file, it puts a whole bunch of stuff in it. For simplicity's sake, if you want, just delete all of it and start from scratch. Okay? So MATLAB gives me a completely empty slate. What the script allows me to do is put a series of commands in a file that I can execute later over and over. I can save it. I can modify it later. I can really build upon it. Right? When I was doing those commands just here in the command window, none of that really gets saved in a nice way. If I want to repeat a series of 5 or 6 commands, it's kind of a pain. So that's the power of the script. The script allows me to put a group of commands together, stored in this .m file. You can think of it as like your document, your MATLAB document, and then build, run it over and over again and build from it. Okay? So let's just do this super easy here. We're going to format bank because we're doing money. Oh, was there a question? Okay. Happy to take questions. Okay, format bank because we're dealing with money. Yeah. And I know I had the variable a there. I don't really like that. I like my variables to mean what they're storing or mean what the calculation's about. So I'm going to call this investments. And remember, MATLAB doesn't know the word investments. It doesn't understand investments. I mean, the people who made MATLAB do. But MATLAB itself does not, right? So here's my investments. I'm Warren Buffett, so I'm going to say one of my investments is 99,000, another one's 7,888, and another one's 345, and 97. Those are my investments. Okay? Now, this is where that semicolon comes in super handy. Because when I run this program, oh, wait, one more thing. You'll notice I hit enter and nothing happened, right? That's because I'm not in the interpreter, right? So down here is the command window. That's where stuff happens. If I do something, it happens right here. I hit enter, MATLAB blends it. What I'm doing right now is making a series of commands, and I'm really just creating something that's not running, right? So I'm saying this line, I think, so I have to kind of start thinking forward. I'm thinking through the process of what does this program need to do? In MATLAB's editor. So in the MATLAB command window, I type edit make money, and MATLAB has its own built-in editor that comes up. Octave does as well. I actually think Octave's editor might be nicer than MATLAB's editor. So definitely, I would say for, okay, just getting off tangent. Technically speaking, you can use any editor you want to make a script. If you really wanted to, you could use Microsoft Word. You will probably end up like wanting to jump off a cliff after you do that. But you could. You would have to force Microsoft Word to save it as a text file without any XML and all that other BS in it. But you could. For those of you really into programming, if you have an IDE that you really like, you like Sublime, you like Eclipse, whatever, you could technically use one of those editors. Notepad++ is actually a great alternative to Notepad. Windows Notepad blows chunks. But Notepad++ is a free open source editor that's actually really good for Windows. But my suggestion to keep things simple, make your life happy, is use the built-in editor in MATLAB, or the built-in editor in Octave, or the built-in editor on Octave Online, right? Because you can do scripts there, right? I think you thought you made an account, didn't you?
Yeah, I made an account.
Okay, so it should work in Octave Online, and we'll test it here in a moment, okay? But you notice, I'm just typing in commands here into this, what I'm calling a script, but nothing is being executed. So that's very different than what we've seen so far. I still have my command window down here. If I type that in here, it would execute, stuff would happen. But instead I'm typing in the script, preparing for me to run it later. You okay with that? Yeah? Okay. All right. So one thing, this is where that semicolon comes in super handy, because while my script is running, I don't want it to keep throwing junk out of the screen. I want to be very careful and say only the important stuff needs to go to the screen for the user. That user's me in this case. There we go. So I got my investments, right? Then I need to define my interest rate. And we said it was 9%, right? So that's 0.09. Also don't want that to get output, so I'm going to put something in there. And then I've got my period. So say number of years. So this is the number of years. This is my interest rate. This is my investment. And I also don't want that. So now I want to calculate the value at the end. I want to do vector computation, and I need to use this formula that I was given. I think I was given that formula. So I got my setup. My setup involves the initialization of all the important data, and then I'm going to do a calculation. So what does this look like in MATLAB world?
So is there a reason why you put that space in between?
Oh, sorry, which space? Oh, it's a great question. So you will get into the habit of putting spaces in certain parts of scripts for clarity of reading, right? Who asked the question? Great question. Like if I was doing this for real, I would probably put another space there too. So I have my first section, which is like a little bit of formatting and configuration. Then the second section, which is initializing or setting up all my data. And then my third section, which is actually doing calculation. And actually, we might as well jump into this right now. And that is, I was going to save it for the next section, but I kind of switched my order around. So the thing that what really needs to happen in your scripts, and let's just do a touch of it here, but we'll do some real ones in a moment. And that is, you should also be using comments. Okay, comments in MATLAB land start with a %. I think Octave permits a £sign as well. But we'll use a % here. So you'll notice the color changes to green. It's kind of hard to say it here, but the color changes to green. Green are comments in MATLAB editor. So configuration, and then I'll say initialize data. I'm going to change the font here just a little bit. So those spaces that I introduced, those line spaces, are purely cosmetic. MATLAB would work fine without them, but they help me understand like the different sections of my code. And by adding those comments in there, that helps me understand it even more. Yeah.
Is there a reason why in those lines of number of years and value at end you capitalize the A in that?
Yeah. Okay. So I think our book talks about this, but I can't remember if it does or not. Camel. What do they call it?
Camel.
Yeah. Camel case is a very popular way to write variables. Camel case starts with a lowercase, and then for every new word, the first letter of that word is capital. And the main reason for doing this way is for readability. Is it to make it easier to read? There's lowercase like this as an example of camel case. Another one is called Pascal case, which is not as common. The first letter is capitalized as well as every subsequent word. This is probably the most common out there today. And then the last one is called, I shouldn't say the last one. The next most common one is called snake case. And that's where you actually use the underscore between your words. This becomes into like preferences, personal preferences, style choices. There are certain places where you might work in a place where they actually say you must stick to this style. Okay, it's unlikely that you'll probably do that unless you end up being a software engineer. But if you're a software engineer working on large software projects, you will most likely be told this is the style we use for our variable name. You must stick with it. Now, if you're most likely an engineer who's not doing software engineering and you're doing this stuff all on your own, it ends up becoming a personal choice. Do you like camel case? Do you like Pascal case? Do you like snake case? The general consensus popular one right now is Pascal case. Oh, sorry, it's camel case. The top. Great question. I have to start learning everybody's names. Hold on. I don't remember your name. What's your name? Dimitri. That's it. I will learn people's names. Okay, cool. Are we okay with that so far? All right, so I want to do some calculation here. Value at end is going to be based on this formula. Right, so what we need to be able to get used to is taking a physics formula, a circuits formula, a stress formula, and converting it into MATLAB. So how do I do that here? Yeah, it's definitely going to use scalar expansion.
So I would like do the 1 plus r to the n to a different variable and then do the scalar expansion against your 7,000, 7,088, whatever.
So I can definitely, so Tarek's suggestion is do this first, stick it in a variable, and then do that with this. It turns out I can also do it all in one line.
Okay.
So what do you guys prefer? I'm totally open to it.
One line.
One line? Okay, but you can do it both ways.
Okay.
And that's something with, you're going to find in programming all the time. There's many ways to do the same thing. So let's just do it all in one line. In fact, let's just follow exactly that order. I just made it smaller. I can make it bigger again. Where'd it go? How about let's try middle and see what happens. How's that? Okay. Is there a way to get this? Oh, yeah. Whoa, that's better. So what variable am I using there instead of A? I decided I didn't like A.
Investment.
Investments. Okay, so let's do investments. Oops. Okay, and then what?
You're gonna do the dot star. What are you? Yeah.
Okay.
1 plus interest. Wait. No, parentheses.
Yeah, so that addition, I want it to happen first, right? So I need to use some parentheses. 1 plus, what's my interest? What variable am I using for my interest? Interest rate, right? And I have chosen to use camel case, and MATLAB is case sensitive. So if I accidentally added capital R in one and not in the other, those are two different variables as far as MATLAB is concerned. I'm not going to get the result I want. All right, good. Interest rate. Then what happens?
Bracket or parentheses.
Close parentheses.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, and now I want to do an exponent. The way I do exponent in MATLAB land. Caret. Yeah. Caret's this little up thingy. It's on the number 6. And what am I raising this to?
Well,
Yeah, so what variable have I used here? Number of years. Yeah, let's do that. Number. All right. Does that look good so far? What do you guys think? Am I missing anything?
Brackets.
You need to do a display or.
So that's a good question. Do I need square brackets here?
No.
So it's okay because here this is a vector. Fair enough.
Right.
Everything else is a scalar.
Okay.
So scalar expansion.
Right.
No problem. So now I want to output the results. So let's use display. And let me tell you, let's see if you can help me figure out how to make this happen. Let me tell you that I want to have, as my outputs, I want one column that is my investments, and then a second column that's the value at the end of my analysis. How am I going to get that output to show?
You need to do a display of the.
I need to use a display.
Vector.
Display. Great.
Investment.
What's that?
You wanted to show first the investment.
Yeah, okay. Can I just do this?
Or do you want it to have a title?
Now let's skip the title for now. We do that?
No.
Right,
on the
okay.
inside? Can't remember. Can't remember.
Think so?
No, I don't know. I'm confused. Can't remember.
All right. I think we're at a good point where we should just try it. Okay? So I've typed in my script. MATLAB does not automatically save the script. You need to save it. Okay. Control S is my favorite way to save, but there are buttons up here you can hit. There's this file button up on the top. Let me get my pointer. Hold on. Let me get my pointer. So up here is a little picture of a floppy drive. I know no one uses floppy disks anymore, but you can. That's your universal save icon. I prefer Control S for save. And I am like paranoid about losing my changes, so I have like this intuitive like I'll hit Control S just automatically all the time because I don't want to lose anything I do. So Control S is a good way to save. Okay, so what the save does is it takes it from your MATLAB memory and actually puts it to your flash drive or your hard drive or whatever. It writes it to something that's basically permanent. Okay. Now, I'm going to help me run this, I'm going to stretch out the command window and shrink the editor window, but I still have both open. See, that's why I expanded the command window, I shrunk the editor. Now, to prove to myself this file is here, I can do ls. Remember, ls was the listing command, right? ls, and I see I got my makemoney.m. Yeah, that's my file. Ignore the ASV. We can talk about it another day. Okay. Now, if I want to run this script, all I have to do is make money, and it runs. So what I have done is effectively created my own MATLAB command. You know, we have linspace before. Linspace is a built-in MATLAB command. I just made my own MATLAB command, my first own MATLAB command. It's pretty cool, huh? All right. That was not the output format I wanted, was it? No, that's okay. It looks like it did something, right? I got 8 values. Looks like the first 4
Or the
investments, and then the next 4 are the values after 10 years.
right?
But it stuck them together in this way that I didn't really want. Huh.
Is it because you put it in the square brackets together?
I think without the square brackets, I still would have gotten a very
Or
similar
in
result.
between the parentheses?
You have to do 2 displays.
Oh,
Yeah, it's like we did earlier.
If you transpose.
Oh, who said transpose? Somebody said transpose. So we need the square brackets for that.
Okay.
But I think the transpose is what we want.
You can put both of them individually, or can you just do one?
So what I want to do here is tell MATLAB, hey, I have a column vector. I'm sorry, I had a row vector, turn it into a column vector. So I got my row vector, column vector, right? My next one, row vector, column vector. Okay? And all I had to do was add those little ticks.
Is it not going to just make one long column?
No, because of that space.
Space.
Yeah.
That's cool.
If I had done, okay, I can show you, okay, let's do this and I'll show you that output in a second. Yeah,
I tried a semicolon between one and it works. But it was
without the
two
transpose?
rows.
Oh, 2 rows, yeah, exactly, yeah, okay. So, let's do that. I'm gonna run my I have to save it. Every time I make a change to the script, I have to save it. This is a common problem. It hurts even the most professional person.
How are you saying?
Control S.
I can see where this is.
Right? So, you sit there and you type, and you run it like, why? I keep changing stuff and my code just keeps not working the way I expect it to. I keep changing stuff and the code's not working the way I expect it to. And the reason is you're not saving it, right? So you could have all these changes in your editor, but when you tell MATLAB to run the program, it's running the one that's on your flash drive or on your hard drive. It's a very common thing that happens even to pros. Make sure you save it before you run it. Okay, so I saved it. I'm gonna run it. I got my 2 columns. Sweet. What's your name again?
David.
David. So David asked, well, how about, won't that just give us one big column? So there's a way to do that. And that would be to put the transpose here. Oops.
Oh, yeah.
And do that. And that should give us just one big column, which isn't what I wanted, but just to see how this might work, right?
That's so cool.
And then what was your name? I'm sorry.
Oh, very good.
Miranda. So you did something else, which was pretty cool, which is using the semicolon inside of the vector matrix creation, that automatically gives you a second row. So this will actually give us 2 rows. So it depends on what kind of format you want for your output, right? You can just play with it. And,
That saves a lot of code.
So if you transpose that one with a semicolon.
so you could totally do that. Yeah, you could do this.
Then you get your first result.
Then you get, now you get your 2 columns, right?
Yeah, which was the first one that we did.
Yeah. So there was like 5 ways to present the results. 3 of them were giving you the same result. Is that pretty cool?
Yeah. Glad we're doing this in MATLAB and not too close for that. That would take a lot longer.
And there may be advantages to doing it that way.
Well, yeah, okay, yeah, that's true.
So let's sort of pause for a moment and think about how do we feel about this? Do we have some questions about why this works? Why I did anything the way I did it?
So can we put a title on it? I want to see what that was. I don't remember.
Oh, just play a title? Yeah, hold on. Let's see if there's some other questions I'm looking at. Yeah.
So I can just copy and paste the editor text into like a Google Drive document. Is that how I can save my work on Google Drive?
No. What I would do if I were you is Google Drive actually lets you save files.
Yeah.
So when you're done, I would bring up the file browser and the web browser with Google Drive and actually just drag your .m file into a folder.
And what will it
Save it as it just saves it as a .m, which is a text file.
Okay.
It won't add any formatting. It won't allow you to edit it. It should not allow you to edit it.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I hope it doesn't because that converts it to a Google Doc, which is a different format. So you can store files in Google Drive that Google does not recognize. Yeah.
For a question, I still find myself feeling confused as to when to use parentheses as opposed to when to use brackets or both.
Yeah. Fair enough. Fair enough. So in this case, all right. Let's see if we can try to. I'm going to just try to enumerate examples, but not like the end-all, be-all laws, right? Can I erase this? Yeah. All right. The square brackets are definitely for vector or array or matrix creation. And then the parentheses we'll say are for order of operations, just as you might be used to in algebra, right? They are also for indices or subscripts. And for command arguments. And the example that we saw for command arguments today was the linspace. Right? So after the command linspace, we had to have parentheses, not square brackets. Right? So if you remember, linspace was this sort of thing. So that's an example of where parentheses comes from.
And maybe the same for parameters and making a function.
Yeah.
Is linspace a function or is it a command?
MATLAB has a hard time really distinguishing between these two things.
Okay.
I think you can think of them synonymously in MATLAB.
I think the book said something about one was numbers and one was like an action. Maybe.
Yeah, I think I read that part too, and I was like, okay, sure.
Yeah, not much.
Because you're like the way when I took a programming course, you're sending arguments to a function, linspace, right? But it's like a command line in MATLAB.
All right, so this is getting into like somewhat nuts and like annoying nitty-gritty stuff, right? I think the way you might conceptualize this is a built-in function may not be a binary, whereas a command might be a binary in MATLAB. And then the reality is MATLAB has some very gray space here, and everything is sort of both. And so but that's how you might think of things in other programming constructs, right? There are things that are like you just get as a binary, and I think of those more as commands. The built-in functions are like a collection of commands that are ready and packaged for you to use. Don't take this too far, but okay. Shall we try putting some headers in there, text? Okay. So if you recall, when we were doing this before, I said, when we get to scriptland, I can make these as two separate lines. The two display commands, I don't have to have them on the same line. So that's what we're going to do now. My first display command is going to be to get my header, my heading. Okay. So my header is going to say Buffett invests and wow, look, I'm rich. The spacing might not work out, but the only way for me to really tell in this instance is to run it. Make sure I save it. I made changes to my script. Make sure I save it. Come down to here, run my make money. Oh, doesn't line up very well. So I need to put some spaces in there. So I'm going to do that.
So do you put them in square brackets because they're thought of as a vector? Or?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, okay, this is a great question. So the question is about why do I have this square bracket here and here, right? And I was hoping, I need to reflect and remember on how to do this. There's a way to actually get this spacing to work out properly, and I'm not able to do it right now because I just don't know how to do it. I could, the reason I have square brackets here is because I'm basically taking one string and combining with another string. The only way I can do that is by having these square brackets to say, I'm basically making a big character vector out of this smaller character vector and this smaller character vector. I could get rid of the square brackets altogether, and it would actually make almost no difference if I just made it one big string. So now what I'm saying is I've just got one big string. I'm not thinking of them as two separate objects, right? When I figure out how to actually do the formatting properly, I will want those two separate objects. And I can play with this together. How do we feel about this? So the beauty of this now is I've got a script. I've got it saved. I've got it on my flash drive. I got my Google Drive, wherever I got it. And now, because I'm a hotshot investment advisor, when Bill Gates comes by and has a different set of investments, all I have to do is go in here and change this one line with the investments from Bill Gates. I don't have to change any of the rest of the code, and voila, I have the answer. Okay? This is where the scripting and the programming can become super powerful for you as an engineer. You do some analysis with one set of data. Next week, you got to do it with another set of data. Right? If you build your code well, it should be such that you have very minimal changes you need to make to apply it to the next situation. Same with number of years. Next time I want to invest, I only have a 5-year investment horizon. I can just go in here, change the number of years, run the program, done.
Keep getting weird symbols.
In the output or the editor? Sometimes you might get weird symbols because you may have mismatched parentheses, for example. And when MATLAB gives you a weird symbol, it's probably trying to give you some help. And when that happens, you can hover over it. So let's try this.
You can tell you top right. It's that little warning thing. Pretty cool.
So you see here, there's a little red underline. It's kind of like a misspelling thing. So I can actually take my cursor and hover over it, and it should give me a hint. And this hint is invalid syntax at this square brackets. And sometimes the hints are very helpful, and sometimes the hints are cryptic. But it's basically telling me something's wrong. Should we do the next example? And then I'll set you off on some homework stuff? Or do you want to just dive into the homework?
That's the homework.
That's lab/homework. What's that? One more example? Let's do one more example, okay? I think it's a good idea. You guys okay? Let's do one more example, then I'll come over and we can talk some more, yeah? All right, so this is the example out of the book. It's like 2-3, I think. It's the one about vertical motion of the gravity. Okay? And I hope you guys think this is a simple example, but I hope you guys find this cool. And as well, the process we're going to go through here is super important. So I want to make a new script. How do I start? How do I make a new script? Edit, space, name of the script, name of the file. Has to end in .env, right? So I'm going to make it in the same exact folder I'm in. I double checked PWD. Okay, I'm in my engineering 38 folder. This is great. I'm going to say edit gravity. Oops. Gravity object. Okay. And MATLAB says, "Oh, do you want to create it?" I say, "Yes, of course." Double checking that. You'll notice the MATLAB editor has tabs. This is sort of a more modern functionality. It doesn't always exist in MATLAB. So now I got my gravity object. Okay. Now, can I erase this, guys? Yeah. All right. So I'm going to introduce the idea. The author talks about this as something weird. He calls it a structure plan. I don't know. I call it pseudocode, and that's a term that I think more people use out there. But he calls it structure plan. I guess maybe structure plan is a little bit higher level than pseudocode might be. I don't know. So structure plan could also be called algorithm, could also be called pseudocode. In a way, it's kind of like English language instructions about what your program's going to do, right? So it is code-like in that way that it has the steps that your program's going to do, but it's not the MATLAB syntax. Right? That's what structure plan algorithm code is supposed to do, right? So what he wants to do is build a program that helps you calculate the motion of a parabola. Sorry, a motion of an object. It's not a parabola. It turns into a parabola because of another problem. Basically what we're doing is we're saying, okay, if you have an object and it starts to go up, how does its trajectory behave over time? And then
it falls.
And then it falls, right? So it says trajectory over time, right? So that's the problem that's being described here, right? And so he has 4 steps in this structure plan, right? He says, step 1, I think it's this marker board, not my pens. Assign the data. Step 2, calculate values, right? Step 3, plot. We're going to do a plot, which is cool. Plot the graph of height over time. And then he has 4 years stop. This is a very traditional sort of thing in the programming world. It's like a lot of people don't think about it, but it's there. The program has to stop at some point, right? For sure. Okay, we okay with that so far? All right. So his advice, the author's advice, is that you have this pseudocode and you actually type it in your program. So let's do that. And we're going to do it. Remember, it's pseudocode, so I have to make them comments, right? What's my symbol for comments? %, right? Everything after the % on that line is a comment. And we'll see in a moment that I can actually mix commands and comments in the same line. So let's do this, okay? So assign the data, and this is gravity, initial velocity, and time to MATLAB variables. Okay? The next step is, oh, one more thing. You'll notice I'm typing this. I'm not copying and pasting. I really, really encourage you for these first few months of getting into MATLAB and programming land that you actually type everything from scratch. You don't copy and paste it from either the book or an online resource or something. And part of it is just learning it better, right? I think if you force yourself to type the commands, you'll catch yourself on syntax, you'll learn the syntax better, you'll learn everything better. So just please take the time to type it. I know it's a pain, I know it takes longer than copy and paste, but you will benefit from it. So the next step, calculate the value of the height, height according to the formula. Then plot the graph of the height against time, and then stop. So that's at the very top. I'm going to add one thing that he doesn't talk about here, and that is something you'll see very commonly in most programs, and that is a more structured and appropriate header. So let's do that. So what that might look like, and everyone's got their own style about it, but this is what I'm going to do. I put my name, put E38 in class exercise week 2. This models vertical motion. And then this
Is there a way to just have like ongoing comment?
say again.
Is there a special character to create like an ongoing comment? Or you
A
don't
comment
have-
block. Are you
Yeah.
thinking of like a comment block? Yeah, I forget. It might be. I forget if MATLAB even has this. MATLAB may not have it. Yeah. A lot of other programs have this comment block concept. Oh, geez, really? Okay, this is how you can do it.
And then the reverse of that. Yeah.
So the question was, is there a way to have a block of lines all be a comment without having to put percent in front of all of them? And this is the syntax for it. It's percent followed by squiggly brackets. I told you there'd be different brackets, and they get annoying, right? There's this I call them squiggly brackets. You call them something else if you want. And to end your comment block, you do that. Now, this has one advantage over the other method, which is the editor allows you to collapse it. You see that minus sign right there? So I can actually collapse this whole thing, and it's there, and I can expand it whenever I want. So I'll leave that to you guys if you want to do it this way or if you want to do it that way. That's a stylistic.
Yeah, how do you finish that out? How do you stop?
The squiggly bracket close, parentheses.
It doesn't seem to be for.
Percent squiggly bracket to start for squiggly bracket percent. So I'm going to get rid of this for now. But like I said, totally up to you guys which one you want to use. Okay. For me, more important is that things are commented well. So as you start writing some stuff, I encourage you to start coming up with a nice structured header for yourself. Should always include your name, maybe a date, what the assignment is for, like what it's for, the class, maybe one sentence about what it's going to do. We have a structure plan here too. So now, our author, Han, he suggests taking your structure plan and actually having that be the start of the comments in your program. So it says copy and paste it and then actually do some of the work, right? So let's see here. Let's call, I'm going to make a variable for gravity. What should I call it?
Gravity.
G or gravity? What do you guys want?
G.
G? Okay. Now, we know that gravity has units. And you might want to do this. Okay. The one really unfortunate thing about almost every programming language is there are a handful of exceptions. Programming languages do not understand units. Something just dropped here. This is perfect. So what that means is, as a programmer, as an engineer programmer, where units are really important, like are you in centimeters, are you in inches, are you in feet, are you in kilometers, like Fahrenheit, Celsius, it is extremely important that through your comments, analysis by hand to double check that your program is actually treating the units correctly. Because MATLAB does not understand units. There's no way for you to tell it about your units, and there's no way for it to check that you have the right units. It's all 100% your responsibility. Sorry. It's not a weakness in MATLAB. Everybody does it.
In mine, I have to do percent close curly space. So someone was asking that theirs wasn't working. So it's like it's not how you had it there. It was different.
But it worked for me.
I know, but mine was like, my comment was just continuing. And so I had to reverse
You
that.
sure I was gonna write it?
Yeah, I just wanted, just in case you hadn't figured it out.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I did. I had this same result.
There's gotta be something else going on. We'll figure it out together.
Sorry.
That's okay. All right, so everybody with me? MATLAB doesn't understand units, nor does Python, C, anything, right? All right. What's the next thing I should define? Yeah, initial velocity, okay. Oops, wait, let's do this. Meters per second squared. So I can combine code. This is code right here, it's a command, with comments. So stuff before the percent is executed, stuff after the percent is ignored. So on the same line, stuff after the percent is ignored, stuff before is executed. You okay with that? All right. So let's call it init velocity. We'll call it init v, and let's do 100 meters per second. What else do I define?
A period of time?
Period of time.
No.
So let me jump ahead a little bit on the marker board at least to give you the equation that we're supposed to be using, right? So it's height equals, let's see, I'm going to call it IV here, okay? IV times T minus G over 2 times T squared. There we go. Okay. Is that right? Yeah, I think that's right. So here's where you have to start thinking about, oh yeah.
So in the line numbering, like 16, 17, those dashes means that that's your script, or there's script going on in there. Is that what that is? Is that what those lines are?
It's a good question. Oh yeah. Okay, this is getting into other functionality. Yeah. I think you guys are right that that just indicates a piece of code that's going to execute. The little circle you saw has to do with MATLAB debugger built in. We'll probably get to that later.
I don't have that one, but not on 17.
Well, it might be on a different line number for you.
Oh, yeah, it doesn't matter on 12.
Okay, so those kinds of things can be different between all of us simply because of the settings that happen to be on my computer, right? So there's probably a setting I can go into to turn that on or turn it off. So I wouldn't be too worried about the way the editor presents this to us. Yeah? And if you do install this on your own computer, whether it's Octave or MATLAB, all those things should be fairly configurable. Right, so I want to think a little bit about this whole vectorization idea, right? Because I want to compute my height over time. How do I get this over time element, and how do I implement it as a vectorized operation?
You need a vector of time over a period.
I need to make a vector for one of these variables, right? And should that vector be for gravity? No. Should it be for initial velocity? No. Should it be for height? No. It will be as a result, right? So I will have a vector result of height. That is height at all these different times. So the time is the thing that I need to have as a vector going into here, right? And so what might be the time period I want to analyze?
0 to 3 seconds.
Let's try 0 to 3 seconds. Great. Okay, so I want to make a time variable that goes from 0 to 3. What should the interval of my analysis be? 0.1 second, 0.2 second? All those sound good to me, yeah? So let's do that. Time equals Gesundheit. I'm gonna start at 0, right? Go to 3, we said, right? How do I get my interval? How do I get my interval using colon notation? Okay? Like so?
Yeah.
All right, good. So then I'm going to make myself a nice little comment here. Simulate. And I want my comment to not just reiterate the command, right? Because I can look at the command and understand what the command is doing, but I need the comment to tell me about why I'm doing this command here, or what's the context of this command, right? So I'm going to say, well, I want to simulate from 0 to 3 with time step 0.1 second. Do I have any more data I need to assign? I think in terms of input, that's it, right?
Oh, H will come with the calculation, right?
Yeah, yeah. So I wouldn't consider that input data. That's resultant data. So I'm going to put that in a different section. In fact, I've got my next comment down here, which is calculate the value of the height according to the formula. So let's do that. How should I represent this in MATLAB land? This formula. So H equals.
Init velocity.
Okay, init v is the variable I used here. Oops. Init v. Remember, asterisk is times in MATLAB land.
Yeah, minus.
Oh, hold on. Ah, good question. So if I'm doing, the question's about the period before the multiply again, right? If I'm multiplying a vector times a vector, and I want element by element multiply, that's when I need the period. Technically speaking, if I'm doing scalar expansion, where if I had vector times scalar, I don't need it, but it doesn't hurt. So in this instance, I don't need it, but it doesn't hurt. All right, what's next?
Minus
Okay.
double parentheses.
Okay.
And G divided by 2
G divided by 2. Okay.
parentheses.
So that takes care of this part right here, right? Okay.
Close one set.
Okay.
Times T caret 2.
Can I use T in my code here?
Oh, yeah.
I have to use the same variable that I decided to use. Unfortunately, I use time. I actually prefer using longer variables because I feel like it's more explicit, more readable, but some people would argue against me about that. Yeah. Okay, and then?
Caret 2.
Ah. Can I get away with the caret 2 here? No.
No.
Right? Because what is time? The vector, right? So if I do vector squared, it's the same as this. Right?
Yeah.
So I need the dot here. Now it's not a dot star, but it's a dot caret. That look pretty good? Oh, right. Yeah. This catches as novices and professionals alike. The parentheses must always be balanced. So however many open parentheses of any type you have, there must be matching closed parentheses somewhere.
Sometimes that's what color will do. Like when you're next to one of your parentheses,
Yeah.
it'll show you what.
Well, I think that might be why we have an underline here. So you see that underline? I put my cursor right there. It says invalid syntax.line might be missing a closing parentheses. So MATLAB is trying to help you out here. You know, this is you guys are probably used to that for misspelled words, right? So MATLAB's editor does this way. Yeah. Ah, great. So caret is like is squared, right? It's the same value times the same value, right? In our case, time is a vector, right? So it's vector multiplied by vector. I want element by element here.
Do you need parentheses here? I feel like you don't.
I think you could get away without it.
Yeah.
And this is where I disagree with the author. I think somewhere along the way, Han says, don't use parentheses if you don't need to. And I actually believe exactly the opposite, which is be more explicit about parentheses. It never hurts. So that's a stylistic thing. Maybe, you know. So so there's a section, I didn't talk about it, I expect you to read it, but there's a section on order of operations, there's a section on some other stuff, but I basically feel like you guys can read it. Colon, transpose expressions, order of operations, precedence, just read it. I mean, it's important stuff. Okay, cool. And then the last thing we're going to do is a visualization. We're going to plot this thing, right? And MATLAB has a great built-in plot command. Built-in function, command, whatever you want to call it.
You might want to semicolon after the end, or else it'll show that calculation.
Oh yeah, I was hoping somebody might notice that or notice it once I ran it. So plot, you'll notice that plot's a built-in command, and I start typing it. I put the open parentheses, and it goes, "Hey, here's all your options." A lot of options. I can go to the help page for plot. There's like an endless help page. We're going to keep it simple. We're going to use this first version, the x variable and the y variable, right? This is x and y, as you know, right? X being the horizontal, y being the vertical, right? What variable do I want represented on the horizontal axis here? What variable do I want represented? Yeah, so time on horizontal. Okay. And what do I want vertical? Height. Okay. Now, your Felipe is absolutely right. I don't have any semicolons in here, which means all of this is going to go to the screen. See what it looks like, just for fun, yeah? What do I have to do if I want to run this? I better save it, right?
Well, don't you have to change height to H, or it's not going to run?
Oh, yeah, good catch. Yeah, see that? MATLAB will not like this. I use H up here, and I use height here. Now I was going to go, hey, there's two completely different variables. Can't do it for you. Good call. All right, and I do need to save it. And how do I run it? I just type the name of the M file, gravity object. A bunch of stuff goes and it thinks. And oh, I got a plot. Woo! Well, kind of getting somewhere. What do you guys think I need to do? Extend my time. I'm just not looking at a long enough time window. How do I do that?
Change the 3 to bigger number.
Change my time vector. Okay.
Change the maximum. Yeah. The 3.
What do you guys think I should try?
20 seconds.
20? Try 20. I'm going to change my comment too, right? I want my comments to be consistent with my code. Save it. You got to save it. Whoa, look at that. Not quite far enough. Change it out to 24. 25. 24. Oh, I'm going to go underground. Well, I went too far. I went underground. But MATLAB doesn't know that I'm dealing with a ground or gravity or anything. It's just doing the calculations. And I, as the engineer, have to interpret that and go, okay, these values down here make no sense. Right? Pretty intuitive in this case because I know I'm dealing with an object above ground. But when you get into circuits or mechanics, whatever you're doing, that's where you as the engineer still add that value. Is you look at this and go, hey, this program gave me a result that makes no sense. There's no sense in this. I suppose with the exception of if you're doing this in the Grand Canyon. So let me show you a couple of interesting things, and then I'll show you the assignment, okay? I'm going to change this back to like 21, so it's about where we were. We'll run it again. Okay, that's pretty close, right? To where I stopped. Now, one of the things that when you start getting to bigger data sets and bigger computation and things, you start thinking about the interval of that I'm doing my time analysis on, right? And so I might, like, man, this code is taking me forever to run. I'm going to change my time interval to 10 seconds. So now I'm going to calculate it at an interval of 10 seconds. Really, I'm just going to calculate it with 3 values here, right? It's be interesting to see how the plot is different. This is my motion of my object. And here again, as an engineer, I can go, okay, this is probably not what my object's going to do. And the reason is because I didn't time step it with enough granularity. Right? Then you could go to the other extreme. I could sit here and be like, right?
That'd take a long time.
And what's going to happen? Yeah, it's going to take longer to calculate. Probably not as much as you would think, but oops, what did not like? What did I do? Did it get too big?
Yeah.
All right, so now you can see the advantage of using semicolon. I have to sit here and watch this thing go by.
It's doing H right now.
So,
Yeah.
No, just for the H.
Yeah.
One thing you need to know is, like, computers are extremely fast at doing math, but they're not extremely fast at displaying stuff like this on the screen. So the reason that was that slow was not because it took that long to calculate, but because it takes that long to display. So I can actually speed this up quite a bit by putting the semicolon there. Actually, I already had the semicolon in this one, so that was just H. Yeah, see, that was much better. Even with that gradient. But you will get to problems where they're much more complicated than that, having that interval fine-tuned. You can adjust. So there's a couple ways you could do this. You can actually modify your code to set up floor. You could modify the window to only display the positive. I don't know if there's an explicit don't plot negative values, but I think you can modify your frame. That might be the most the proper way to do it would probably be modify the code to set up floor. So you would modify your matrix such that anything below 0 gets set to 0. We'll talk about floors. All right, so let's take a deep breath. How do you guys feel about this? You got some questions? Okay, so canvas. I really, really need you guys to figure out the MATLAB grader thing. I really need to make sure you guys all are getting my announcements and things, because we are going to rely on Canvas a lot. Okay, so this is the plan for next week. Okay, I'd really like you guys to read 2.6 through 2.9. We didn't get through 2.6, so if 4 is not, you don't have time for chapter 4, don't worry about it. At least get through 2.6 through 2.9. The MATLAB Grader 1 assignment, I believe, is visible. If those of you could log in MATLAB Grader and see it, it's on the left-hand side. It's not super intuitive where it is. I'll put some comments in there to help try to find it, but it is on the left-hand side. I need to see how well this works for us, okay? I am going to make a comprehension check like I did for today. I'm assuming a lot of you weren't able to do last week's one, so I'm going to extend that. So everything from last week is extended for another week. Those activities were super easy, super simple. Just get them in. Okay? What I do want to talk to you about is MATLAB Grader 2. That's the assignment I want you to start here and then work for the week. There are 3 parts to it. And it's what you see here is effectively a placeholder. It's the assignment. But I will put these in the MATLAB Grader, and that's the way we're going to submit them. And I think it's really cool because MATLAB Grader gives you pretty instant feedback about how well you're doing with your code. So with MATLAB Grader, I think what's going to happen is you're going to actually write your code in MATLAB or Octave or whatever, and then you either upload your M file into the grader or copy and paste it into the grader, say submit, and it will evaluate it. And you can do it over and over and over, and I'll tell you this is correct, this is wrong. So there's some feedback mechanism there. So, okay, I'll pause there for a moment. I feel like there was a couple questions.
Oh, I was gonna say, I'm in MATLAB Grader and I'm seeing an assignment that Marvin should be matrix with three
Yes.
elements. Okay.
Yes, that's the only assignment in there right now. Perfect. So if you go to MATLAB Grader, sign in.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, I don't think I can get the view you guys get. Yeah, oh, actually, this is pretty close. Yeah, so what's not intuitive now is there's nothing here but the assignments on the left. It's just called Getting to Know MATLAB Grader. And inside of it are problems. So if you click on that, the problems show up. Oh, somebody finished it, yay. Okay, and here's the instructions, okay? And this is what it looks like for you guys, sorry. So what's cool is you can type your script into here. I think there's a way to upload an end file, is there not? No, that sucks.
You can just copy and paste.
You can just copy and paste it. So I would work, what I would do if I were you is work on the MATLAB and work on your file in Octave or MATLAB. Theoretically, you can work on it here because this actually interprets MATLAB and runs it. Right? So you can type MATLAB code here. Marvin, let's say Marvin, right? Equals. Then you can run the script, and then you get feedback that says, that I didn't really, so I get pretty useful feedback, right? It says here, variable Marvin must be of size 3 and 4. Well, I clearly don't have that. It also tells me it is currently size 1, 3. Check where the variable is assigned a value. So it's giving me a hint to try to get to the right answer. Super cool. The final matrix result, it says the submission must contain a variable named Jupiter. I didn't even create a variable named Jupiter. So it'll slowly, you can sort of peel the onion and get there. I don't suggest that as the strategy to solve this, but like, it does give you feedback. And so these other assignments that are here, I'm calling these MATLAB Grader assignments MGs. So there's MG01 and MG02. Where's MG02? There it is. So why don't you guys get started on MG02 based on what you see here in Canvas, and I will get the grader part set up in MATLAB Grader tomorrow.
Are you manually putting those in, or does that program give you like awesome problems that are? Okay.
There are a total of like 7 examples, and they're all kind of.
And then once you've done that, though, you have like a little portfolio of questions.
I sort of hope so, because I'm going to put a lot of effort into it. It doesn't end up being that way. I'm going to be one pissed off month.
It's almost more to design the problem.
Sometimes it is. And Felipe brings up a really good point. This is the first semester I'm doing this class in 3 years. These are all new assignments. MATLAB Grader is all new for me. So please, if something looks like it's impossible or like doesn't make any sense at all, let me know, okay? Because I need that feedback from you guys so we don't like go crazy. Is that cool?
I set up that account earlier today, and it's not allowing me to log on.
Okay, let me come over and help. So everyone get started working on this part, okay? Part 1, part 2, and part 3. You're not expected to finish it now.
Working on that soon.
Yeah, MATLAB Grader is not set up. Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll have that MATLAB Grader set up with this stuff hopefully by tomorrow, okay? I'll let you know.